Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show on this Monday night, the 29th of March, 2021. And the Joe and Joe Weather Show brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware. They are the Long Island's largest provider of mulch now, and they've got tons of it as the trucks and the front loaders are moving it along here in all different colors. So however you want your lawn to look, or maybe you want your landscaper to get your front lawn to look that way, and landscape your whole house, give Omni a call at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, 631-756-1125. The best prices in town, omnitruevalue.com. And brought to you by Wholesale Holiday Lighting by Giannini, your complete holiday lighting specialist, meeting all your decorating needs when the holidays come. And believe it or not, they'll be here sooner than you think. They're at 162 Ocean Avenue in Lindenhurst. Whether you want your home decorated or you want to be part of this business, give them a call, 631-957-5106. The website is liholidaylighting.com. So rumor has it, Joe, that the wind machine is finally being turned off again. Notice that there were some scattered power outages in the Northeast, but nothing crazy. And now we settle for what I think should be your pick of the work week anyway, for tomorrow, Tuesday, which looks like really the best day of the next four.
Absolutely. Going to be a beautiful day here tomorrow. Sunshine, temperatures mid-afternoon here in the Hudson Valley, maybe getting up to about 60 or 62 degrees. And after tomorrow, that's it. We got a wet day, it looks like, on Wednesday. Still rather wet early Thursday, and then colder weather, chilly weather to follow for the end of the week. Actually, it gets chilly here on Thursday late, and Friday, more of that. The weekend right now, Easter weekend, doesn't look all that bad. Nice warming trend, mid-50s Saturday, maybe back to low 60s when we get to Easter Sunday.
And from the standpoint of severe weather, because we did have some last night with that cold front moving on through, 100 knot jet, Joe, I noticed on the 500 millibar map, a little 100 knot jet max that moved right over southern New Jersey and southeastern Pennsylvania, so that squall line kind of pushed up a little bit further to the north than at least what SPC was thinking in terms of their watches, because I believe there was a severe thunderstorm warning even for New York City last night for a short time. But moving that marginal risk up further north was definitely the right thing to do.
Yes, indeed. Did the National Weather Service at Mount Holly confirm that one particular violent storm, I think it was in the vicinity of northern Ocean County, was that a tornado, or was it just simply straight line wind?
Hold on and I'll
Have not gotten.
as Ernestine Tomlin would say, hold on and I'll check. I don't see anything on their website. I will tell you, by the way, that the tornadoes that rolled through Alabama last week were all upgraded to EF. Two of them, including the one that moved through Centerville, Alabama, was a EF3. So they surveyed the damage, and then there was another one that they upgraded from an EF1 to an EF2. So definitely lived up to the forecast expectations. Although that's always you say that from a technical perspective, which is where I'm coming from. I always say that whenever these severe weather forecasts are put up, when they wind up playing out less than advertised, that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, because severe weather is so destructive, and we saw it 2 weeks in a row across the South. There was some severe weather risk over the next couple of days, but it doesn't compare at all. And I'm not anticipating even the one for Wednesday. The severe weather risk across the Southeast. I think at worst there'll be an area of slight risk that they'll put in there. Right now they've just got a marginal risk in that particular zone.
And right now we have something that we don't often see in the local tri-state area for Long Island Sound and New York Harbor, a low water advisory that is in effect until 10 o'clock this evening. They
Quick,
have canceled the small craft advisory.
run, get your water. It's running low.
Below normal water levels will result in hazardous navigating conditions. Now that's a change, really. I mean, we see this so often with, gale warnings and small craft advisories and rough seas and everything else. But now we have below normal water levels. And I guess if they get too low, you might end up getting your boat stuck somewhere.
On the
I'm interpreting that.
who's out on a boat? Coming off those gales.
Well, I'm just a reporter here. I'm just reporting what the National Weather Service has done. I suppose it has something to do with the new moon, and I guess
Yeah.
those roaring northwesterly winds, which literally is pushing the water out from the shore areas, from the Long Island and Connecticut shorelines, and leading to that unusual low water level. Lower than normal low tide, I guess.
Bill Rogers wants to know first pitch weather at Fenway on Thursday.
At Fenway?
At Fenway.
In Boston?
In Boston.
In Boston?
Yes, in Boston.
Gee, I don't know about, Thursday looks like a day where if the precipitation has not already come to a halt by game time, it will be dribbling down by game time, and the temperatures are going to be probably, I would guess, in the 40s. You wouldn't want to watch a ball, but of course, naturally, although this year, in the year of the pandemic still, where you don't have a guaranteed sold out ballpark, because when it's sold out, then they have a tough time, determining whether or not they should cancel the game, even though the weather is not all that great. But there aren't going to be all that many people, 10% or 20% of the normal crowd on Thursday if it's at Fenway Park. So maybe they'll just say the heck with it and cancel the game, and hopefully be able to play it on Saturday. See, Joe, it's interesting. They don't have a game scheduled the day after opening day because of a setup just like this. Actually, if they do cancel on Thursday, then they would play on Friday because they don't have a game scheduled on Friday.
It's going to be cold in Boston on Friday.
It'll be cold on
Boston. It's going to be a screaming wind in Boston on Friday.
This is what baseball gets. Back in the day, back when you and I were young bucks,
they wouldn't start till about April 7th or so.
Sometimes they did. Yeah, back in the day, they back in the early and mid 60s, it wasn't until the middle of April, like the 12th, 13th, 14th of April. And now, of course, they have. I saw something today where a few years ago the Yankees actually played opening day on this day.
Yeah.
March 29th.
Yeah.
Crazy. So what do you expect? The earlier you play these games,
I think if I remember correctly, though, they played. Why do I think they opened the season in Florida somewhere?
Well, I know the Mets are supposed to play on Thursday night. Believe it or not, Thursday night in Washington D.C. and it's going to be cold down there too. So, and you know what's going to happen? All of these big stars who make multi-million dollars or whatever, they'll go out, they'll play in 35 or 40 degree temperatures. They'll, pull a hamstring or they'll pull a muscle or whatever because of the cold weather, and then they'll be out for like 4 to 5 weeks. What are you going to do?
Yep. I saw a couple of notes. First off, Christinapedia is on the board tonight, and I read that they were supposed to let you out today, which is terrific, and continued speedy recovery for you, Christinapedia, getting over the big C, COVID, and not the big C, thankfully. Either way, it's not a good thing, but it's right. COVID. So definitely glad to see you out of the hospital. those of you who might have heard a little music in the background, this is wonderful timing. Yes, that was actually my phone, which is in the other room, which the ringtone is the theme to Perry Mason. And this is because I've been trying to get a hold of two of my nephews for the last 2 days, asking them to call me. And of course,
And now they're calling you.
now they're calling me naturally. Okay, because that's just the way the world works around here, I suppose. I have two monitors up, so I can monitor the chat board too, as Joe Rayo is. So questions and comments are always welcome. I just wanted everybody to know that they weren't hearing things if they heard, because you may have seen me. I pulled my headset out like this because I was hearing it faintly through the headset, and then, I mean, with the headset covering. So yeah, that was Perry. I think Della may have taken the message for me. Della voicemail. Okay. The other thing is, by the way, we've got that front and developing wave on that front for Wednesday night and Thursday is probably going to produce some wet snow and accumulating wet snow from maybe the Central Appalachians on northward to upstate New York, western PA, and maybe eventually up into north central PA and the Catskills. I think and points north and east of there into northern New England. I think it's going to be elevation driven. So the higher up you are, the more you'll wind up seeing. And it wouldn't be a shocker to me if some elevated areas wind up with something substantial out of this. But for most, since when you go into some of these elevated areas, particularly above 1,500 feet, there are not that many people living up in those elevated areas. But nonetheless, there will be some wet snow accumulation in those places as that weather system moves along. And as you said, Joe, the weekend will be recovering from that. But Friday morning is going to be cold. We're going to be temperatures down in the 20s everywhere, and there'll probably be a pretty stiff wind. So wind chills will be down in the teens. And the daytime Friday looks pretty cold too. Most highs will only be in the low to mid 40s, but we should recover nicely for the weekend. Meanwhile, take a look at this U.S. satellite view, because we always, I'll show it all the time, but we should celebrate the fact that when we have a satellite like this, where it's nice over a good chunk of the U.S., pretty much everywhere east of the Rockies to the East Coast, enjoyed a beautiful day of blue skies and sunshine. And by the way, Joe, I was 36 this morning for my morning low. I didn't check.
Wow.
I didn't check what the afternoon high was, but I'm going to just guess at 62 because I actually had to put the fireplace on around midday because it was cold in here. It was only 60 in the house.
Well, I'll tell you, it was another night of gusty, strong winds. Again, we talked about this yesterday. I think it was the fifth time that we've had some sort of a wind advisory posted for the immediate tri-state area. And you're getting the impression that, late winter, early spring is going to be remembered for the gusty, strong winds that we've had. And, with this next system rolling along or rippling up along that front later on in the week, who knows, the winds may once again pick up later in the week, or at least into the start of the weekend. We'll have to monitor that carefully. But I tell you, it's been one windy day after another up here.
And by the way, as for those of you who think that we're being singled out here in the Northeast and in the northern Mid-Atlantic states, I've got the watches and warnings map, and one of the things that stands out, usually it's one form of weather or another, be it flood watches or winter weather advisories or winter storm warnings. But the big story tonight is the fact that you have a large portion of the middle of the country is under a high wind warning from east. Let me check my colors to make sure, because I just high wind warning up for eastern Montana, much of Wyoming, parts of Colorado, down into Kansas, most of Nebraska, South and North Dakota, and we have a large area of red flag warnings from New Mexico and southeastern Arizona and southwest Texas, all the way up into Missouri and Iowa and into Minnesota. So it's a screaming wind, and it's a bone dry wind from the southwest, because there's not going to be a whole lot of precip coming out of this in this zone over the next couple of days. So the red flag warning, of course, pointing out high risk of fire conditions. We have some frost warnings up in the Central Carolinas. We have flash flood watches, preliminary flash flood watches up in Central Tennessee, and that's because of the rain in that area. Tons and tons of rain over the severe weather episode from late last week. And by the way, that water, those rivers come into North Georgia. So our the river level here at my house was actually the highest I've seen it here since I've been here. It came down some today, but it's still higher than normal, and the water's moving through, filling up Lake Nottely, and fishing will be underway in a big way next week, and I can't wait.
You better watch out. If it gets any higher, you may be doing your fishing from your kitchen.
Yeah, well, we don't want. That's not going to happen. If that, I'm about 100 feet or more up above where the river level is, so may even be more like 200 feet. So I'm not too worried about water reaching up to my neck of the woods. Radar's quiet tonight, just about everywhere across the U.S. Hardly any precip going on, except for a little activity in northeastern Montana, and that's it. Otherwise, the nation is bone dry. So the severe weather risk for tomorrow, there's no thunderstorm. Not only are there no severe weather risk today, but there's no thunderstorm activity to speak of across the United States. Now, for Tuesday into Wednesday morning, SPC has a marginal risk in Arkansas, northern Mississippi, northwestern Alabama, western Tennessee, northern Louisiana, and northeastern Texas. On Wednesday into Thursday, that risk area shifts eastward and expands a little bit. There's just kind of this giant finger that runs up from southeast Texas and Louisiana, northeast through Mississippi, Alabama, most of the northern half of Georgia, western South Carolina, most of North Carolina, eastern Tennessee, and southwest and south central Virginia. But I don't think this is going to evolve into anything more than maybe they'll stick in an area of slight risk for somebody here. But this should not be, certainly not going to be the widespread outbreak of the last two storms that moved through this area. But nonetheless, Joe, it's that memory feature in the atmosphere. This seems to be the target zone this severe weather season. So it wouldn't be a shocker here if this winds up perhaps outperforming a little bit. I don't expect it to outperform a lot, but if it outperforms by a little bit, it wouldn't be a shock.
No, it wouldn't. I'm kind of surprised to see the area of general thunderstorm coverage on day 3, making it as far north as it is depicted up into central New Jersey. But apparently, and now one has to wonder whether or not in the next couple of days that area of thunderstorm coverage actually continues northward and will envelop parts of the tri-state area, as we saw with this last round of thunderstorm activity, which, again, yesterday was not supposed to be much of anything. And then all of a sudden, here we were in a zone of marginal convective activity. So who's to say? Maybe we'll have to deal with maybe a little lightning and thunder on Wednesday with that next round of showery weather coming our way.
Well, no lack of rainfall here, so we've got for the northern mid-Atlantic on up into southern New England, coming from the Thursday system, because the Wednesday night into Thursday system is the only one really in play in the next 7 days, and WPC indicating roughly, let's say, 3/4 of an inch to 1.25 inches, with a few pockets of 1.5 inches running from northeast Virginia all the way up into Maine. And also some significant rainfall of 1.5 inches or more from northern Mississippi, Alabama, eastern Tennessee, northernmost Georgia, and into southeastern Kentucky and southern West Virginia. But again, this is the one system in play this week, and you can look out west of the Mississippi and it really shuts off. There's very little, if any, precip being indicated in the western half of the United States, with a couple of exceptions, like in central Colorado, up in northwestern Montana. It's nothing especially heavy. It's all mostly about a half an inch or less, and a little bit of heavy activity in parts of the Sierra Nevadas in California. The Pacific Northwest is also not showing a whole lot of precip. Now, as for snow, WPC's actually beefed this up a little bit. The probability of at least 2 inches here, showing, and this goes to Thursday night. So there's still going to be more snow to follow Thursday night into Friday morning in a lot of these areas here. Seeing up the light blue is the light blue, the very light blue is actually 70% probability of at least 2, and the salmon color, if that's what it is 80%, and then that red color is 90 to 95%. Just let me get my colors right here. Yeah, 90 to 95% probability of at least 2 inches through upstate New York and northern Vermont. For 4, we're put this up on the map here to see what that has to say, and just give her to there it goes. So in southwestern New York, west of the Catskills to Binghamton, north into northeastern New York, Joe, there's a fairly high probability of at least 4. Again, this is only through Thursday night, Thursday evening, and there'll be more snow on top of it. This particular map view will be more valuable tomorrow night because it'll take through the entire system, and a probability of at least 8 in the Adirondacks. Do I dare hit the 12 button? Should I hit the 12 button? Oh, why not?
Why not?
And I've hit the 12 button, and they've got a 10 to 20% probability of at least 12. And that, again, when we come back to this tomorrow night, we'll have a much better picture of what is going on. Meanwhile, take a look.
That's probably for.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Joe.
That's probably for Mount Marcy, the tallest point in New York State, which I think is like 5,300 feet above sea level in the Adirondacks. So, if anybody's thinking about climbing Mount Marcy, bring along your snow shovel in the days to come.
That's taller than any point in the Catskills?
No, I'm talking about up in the.
In the Adirondacks. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, look at the isobars in the Midwest, from the Great Lakes down into Texas, and then going all the way back to the plains. No wonder they have a high wind warning up, Joe, because it's the gradient is extremely tight. But it's one of these deep lows in Canada where there's no moisture inflow. The Gulf is kind of shut off at the moment, and you're seeing very little in the way of precipitation. You start to gel some up on Tuesday, but meanwhile here we've got our high southeast of Cape Cod. There's a southwest wind here for tomorrow. I think we'll have a good deal of sunshine. We'll probably see temperatures in the 60s just about everywhere, except for maybe east and south facing shorelines that get the sea breeze, and temperatures you get down into Virginia, southern Maryland, Virginia, probably closer to 70. Now, the front swings east, and now you start to see the Gulf open up Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, and you're seeing this moisture develop in the Ohio Valley, the eastern lakes, down into the Tennessee Valley, and then extending west into Arkansas. That is snow that the GFS is picking up in southern Missouri. And then, of course, you've got one of these situations, Joe, where you got the front coming, and then there's the upper support with the trough swinging around, so you get a wave that develops, an inland type wave. You know, I wonder, I'm looking here at 2 a.m. Thursday, and you know, you were talking before about pushing up that chance for thunderstorms maybe a little bit further north. I kind of think that might be a possibility here because this looks like there's a bit of a warm front that's trying to push northward with that low because of the low track. So we're going to be close to that I guess want to call it the double point, where we often refer to an occluded low, and you look for where the triple point is, where the occluded front, the warm front, and the cold front meet. In this case, we have, I guess we can call it a double point, where the low center is. So maybe there might be a little convection there, possibility. Nothing crazy. And then, of course, the front will go by, and you see that change over to snow that occurs Wednesday night in Western PA, down through West Virginia into Western Virginia and northeastern Tennessee, and of course the low runs up into Massachusetts, eastern Massachusetts, and intensifies when it gets into the Gulf of Maine. And there's your wind machine again, with the gradient tightening up a bit later Thursday night into Friday morning.
Never wants to end. It's incredible. By the way, I think we have somebody new on the chat board, Sandra Blythe. Yeah, Sandra Blythe, and she's watching us from North Dakota, and she says it's getting cold again. And the way those isobars are arranged right now, the winds, instead of from the southwest, apparently are coming for her from the northwest. But Sandra, I will tell you this, looking at the long-range maps for the end of the weekend, especially into the holiday weekend, you're going to be seeing temperatures climbing back up by the end of the week into the 60s. And I wouldn't doubt that even in North Dakota, most of North Dakota, Saturday and Sunday is going to be in the 70s. So you're getting cold again now, but that's only temporary. I think it's going to start really warming up some later on in the week, and especially again this weekend. While we here in the Northeast find ourselves with a shot of colder air, and as Joe just pointed out, windier conditions for later Thursday and Friday, probably in the 40s Thursday and Friday. Then we'll get into the 50s, we hope, on Saturday with sunshine, and maybe we'll be.
I think we'll be in the 60s on Sunday.
Sunday in the 60s. Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, with the high going out with the high going out off South Carolina and westerly isobars Saturday afternoon, the temperature should bounce nicely. And Sunday, it's mostly a west wind, the high off the North Carolina coast. So if we get enough sunshine, what's to stop it? Maybe we could have a little bit of upside on Sunday temperature wise. And much of the East Coast is going to be in nice shape for Friday, and I'm going to be a little bit on the cool side, chilly side here Thursday into Friday with the northerly wind, but eventually even I warm up, believe it or not.
Well, I'll tell you what, this day, and we've mentioned it before, March the 29th, it was Easter Sunday on this day in 1970, and we had at Central Park rain changed to snow around 10 o'clock in the morning. And it eventually accumulated to the amount of 4 inches at Central Park, making it the snowiest Easter on record. And up here where I live, of course, I wasn't living up here back then.
I remember in the Bronx, we must have had close to a foot out of that.
Really, I remember. I do remember the snow. I don't remember that it was maybe as much as that. But up here where I am,
we were shorter then. It seemed like a foot.
I also remember on this day in 1984, there was a massive coastal storm that was really hammering much of the mid-Atlantic and Northeast with lots of wind and lots of heavy precipitation. And I must tell you, Joe, and I'll only say this now because he has gone to the great beyond, John Coleman, who was a meteorologist well known in Chicago, and then he moved on to Good Morning America on the ABC network, and then in 1984 he was working as an on-camera weathercaster right here in New York on CBS. And I don't know if he was doing, I guess he was doing his own weather forecasting, and he didn't rely on somebody else to do it. But the night before, on the 28th of March, I think it was Andy Gregorio, who now is up in upstate New York in Saratoga Springs, we were watching the 11 o'clock report on CBS, and John Coleman went on a real long limb and said that he was forecasting for New York City a snowstorm of, get this now, 24 to 30 inches. He had predicted 24 to 30 inches of snow for New York. And as it turned out, there was snow. Generally, it was about 3 or 4 inches, and it really didn't accumulate to all that much because it kept alternating between rain, snow, and every time the snow accumulated to any degree, the rain would come along and wash it away. Then it would go back to snow. But can you believe actually predicting a snow event of 24 to 30 inches? I and it wasn't surprising that not long after that, John Coleman was no longer weathercasting on CBS two. Sorry about that,
No,
John.
that's all right. I just want to point out that Mr. Ruben Fairchild, the chat board producer on this show, says, and I quote, "This old dude has a good memory."
What old dude? What old dude are you talking about? I remember my wife. My wife and I were married the same year that John Coleman made that 24 to 30-inch snow
Well, you have to
forecast.
remember your wife.
Well,
She knows how to operate a chainsaw better than you do. So, and she's watching this
yes,
program.
probably is right now.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
I'm going to go back to the maps. I just want to kind of really quick go through the upper air. This is a time of year that if you don't have severe weather around, we're kind of in that we're in that zone now where we're in between. The winter weather season, barring a surprise, is done, and hurricane season still has a ways to go before it becomes meaningful in terms of storms that could possibly threaten. And that usually is not until later in the summer. So we, kind of in that funny place where there's not a whole lot happening, but we still see this blocky pattern that's going to try to develop. It's a little bit different this time on the latest runs. So if you watch here on the upper air, you see this trough, and this is the trough that moved through yesterday and last night. Now that pulls out, and of course we're in a nice little ridge on Tuesday, which is going to produce a really nice day. So do take advantage of it. And then of course you've got this next trough, a rather strong one that sharpens as it approaches the East Coast and swings around. And then it cuts off and lifts up. But in the same time, if you look northeast of there, you start to see building pressures in southern Greenland and back over to Iceland. There's your blocking high, but it's not pinning, Joe. The upper low was forecast to kind of get pinned from Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, and it's not really doing that. Instead, it gets shoved out to the east, and we get into a bit of a ridge position here, starting over the weekend and into early next week. But you still got the block, and then it's afterwards you get an upper low. But you know what? It doesn't look quite as menacing, at least from this viewpoint. Doesn't look quite as menacing as it did back just a few days ago. It takes longer to get to the same place. I mean, eventually it does produce one of these systems that it wants to drop back southwestward, and you get into that cold raw flow. But you're going to have to wait until maybe about April 9th, 10th, and 11th for that to happen. So that's far enough in the long range that I think we could probably not worry about it too much at this point.
And meanwhile, they are calling, they being the Climate Prediction Center, for above normal temperatures in about a week or so for us, and an 80% chance of above normal, an 80% probability of above normal temperatures out where our friend in North Dakota lives. That I would suggest that would even point toward possibly temperatures in the 80s out in the northern and central plain states before too much longer. So it's really going to warm up some in the nation's midsection. Even here, it'll start warming up slowly but surely after this shot of cold that we'll be dealing with later in the week and on into the start of the upcoming holiday weekend.
All right, well, we're back up full screen here. Want to take this opportunity, by the way, to wish those of you of the Jewish faith celebrating Passover a happy and blessed Passover to you. This is Joe. This is kind of this week you've got Passover, it's Holy Week, we have Easter coming up this weekend, and of course this is all still playing out in the world of the pandemic. So normally this would be a time for running around and doing whatever it is you have to do to get ready for your holiday, for the holiday, whichever one it may be, and so audience levels are kind of low. Some people that are lucky enough have gone on vacation this week with the kids maybe out of either out of school or homeschool learning or whatever it is that's going on in that respect. But we just want to wish everybody a safe and wonderful holiday, whichever you celebrate.
And next year, Easter is going to come rather late in the calendar. It'll be coming, Joe, on April the 17th. That's not as late as it can get. Believe it or not, it can get as late as April the 25th. And if you and I are still fortunate enough to be on this earth in the year 2038, we will be able to enjoy the latest Easter in our lifetime, and in quite a number of not just decades but centuries in 2038. But it's going to come pretty late next year, April the 17th, and hopefully next year this pandemic will be behind us, and we'll be able to enjoy fully the feast of not only Passover but also Easter with full churches, and coming so late in the month of April. Who knows? We might even be enjoying temperatures in the 70s and 80s ourselves.
Yeah.
Here in the tri-state area next year. Not this year, but next year.
Frank Riccio, who I haven't mentioned it, but I hope you're recovered from what you had to go through in the last couple of months. But do you bring up an interesting question? He says, "Why has there been such a lack of nor'easters in recent years?" I'd have to go back and kind of sit there and count them. But Joe, you
in recent years?
Yeah, I mean, you might
in recent years. What about that? What about just a couple of years ago? We had 4 in the month.
Well,
of March.
I was just thinking of that. So I was just going to say they seem to come in bunches. So yeah, I mean, you go back to 2018, and we had those 4 nor'easters in 3 weeks, and they weren't just. I mean, they were all formidable storms, and a lot of them, they all produced strong winds. 3 of them produced heavy snows. One of them produced very heavy snow for me. I got snow out of all 3 out of 3 out of the 4, but they do seem to run in bunches. So either you get a lot of them one after another, or you get into a winter where, like the last 2, not this one, but the 2 prior winters, where the pattern is just not conducive for nor'easters. So they come in bunches, and they come when they come. That's been my perspective. I'm thinking for the most part in the last 10 years we've probably had a plethora, a cornucopia, to use a 799 word, of nor'easters, but it's uneven. It's not evenly distributed through that 10-year period. Some years a lot, some years not so much.
Well, I mean, February alone, we had 2 storms. One of them seemed to take forever to finally, the first one, the big storm that we got all that snow from on February 1st, was a slow mover. And then the one we had in the middle of the month, around the 17th and 18th of February, we had like 36 straight hours of snow out of that storm. So they've been around, and maybe they don't move as quickly as they used to. I could remember some storms that rocketed on through here, and on the other hand, we've had the storms that we've had of late, the nor'easters we've had of late have moved have sidled, if I may use that term, slowly but surely through our part of the United States. So we'll see. By the way, I'm the one with Brillo Jeopardy for you tonight.
Yes, you are. Before you get to hold on one second. Just want to touch. Mark G says, is it true that the Gulf Stream has shifted east or west? And could that have an impact on storm development and track? There have been a number of articles lately a couple of them that I've actually had the time to sit down and read through. And it's a subject matter that's come up before about the collapse of the jet stream in the North Atlantic. And there were some recent articles regarding what are the longer term implications. And in my view, which is by no means coming from any kind of expert angle, because I'm not really working on the data. I don't understand. It's above my pay grade. Let's put it that way. But when it comes to the implications about what this means, that's a difficult question to answer, especially in the world of weather, because Joe, you and I both know there are always consequences that occur that you don't think of in certain weather situations, even in some of the a basic weather situation. Sometimes you get a surprise that shows up for some particular area that you don't really, you may not have anticipated. And then you sort of look back afterward and you say, oh, now I understand why it happened. And I think that's probably how you might approach this notion of the collapsing of the Gulf Stream. It's tied to the melting glacier in Greenland, that fresh water lowering the salinity level, which is raising the freezing temperature, and it's creating all sorts of potential weather havoc. But I don't know that anybody actually knows what that is going to mean. I mean, they can theorize about whether that might mean for stronger storms to the west, where the Gulf Stream is more active. But again, you're not going to know that. Okay, Mr. Ruben Fairchild says, do we think hurricanes will become obsolete in 10 years? What? Now, this goes back, I was thinking about this today, okay, because, well, he brought up the fact that of the whole thing about weather modification. And I wanted to kind of mention this because there are proponents of the idea, okay, in higher scientific levels. I actually heard an interview, Michael Mann of Dr. Michael Mann, University of Penn State. If you look him up, he is one of the let's call him one of the fathers of the idea of climate change and global warming. Brought up the fact that notably Bill Gates, for example, in one of his books, talks about the existence of technology that would can go in and sort of modify these storms. And I thought it was very interesting. Joe, Michael Mann said that that's something that you really don't want to do. And when you think about it, it makes sense because, first of all, the unintended consequences of going in and doing some sort of modification can be potentially catastrophic because you just don't know what you're fooling with here. The other thing I would say is the natural process, and we've talked about this, the natural process of the function of a hurricane is to redistribute heat in the atmosphere. If you take that out of the equation, if you remove that from the equation, what are you going to do with all that excess heat? I mean, what happens to all that excess heat? So, no, I not only, I mean, I know this may sound a little, I'm not trying to sound callous here, but, and certainly hurricanes are destructive, obviously, when they make landfalls, but they do have a function in nature. That's why they're there. That's why they have always happened, because they redistribute heat in the atmosphere from the overheated tropics and subtropics and spread it out and bring it up to the polar region so that the atmosphere can eventually just kind of settle down. If you don't have that, who knows what could possibly happen. So no, they're not going to become obsolete.
And in the future, there may not necessarily be more hurricanes. We see, or we often hear when we have these potent storms, that there's always somebody out there saying, it's because of global warming, it's because of climate change, and we're going to be seeing a lot more of this, a lot more of these storms in the coming years as this becomes more prevalent. No, this is not the story behind hurricanes' connection with global warming or climate change. What we likely will see because of climate change and global warming are more potent storms, more Category 3, 4, and 5 storms in the future, as opposed to, let's say, 50 years ago, where we didn't see anywhere near as many of those great or super hurricanes that we have become so accustomed to now. That may very well be, traced back to climate change and global warming. So it's not so much the frequency, it is the potency of these storms as we move through the coming years. And I agree 100% with you, Joe, that they're not certainly becoming obsolete, because that is the way Mother Earth lets off steam. You and I and everybody watching at one time or other has You have to let off a little bit of steam. The Earth does that by every summer here in the Northern Hemisphere by producing those hurricanes, which help to get rid of all of that surplus, that excess heat in the tropics.
All right.
And that is the main purpose of hurricanes. So the frequency of these storms are not necessarily going to increase, but as the heat builds, as more and more heat builds in the coming years, if indeed you are one that believes in global warming or climate change, then these storms, these hurricanes, are going to become much more potent, and we're going to be seeing a lot more of those Cat 3, 4, and 5 storms. Whereas, like 50 years ago, we had a Cat 3 storm, that would be like, stop the presses.
Right.
We've got a
Well,
major hurricane.
Tim,
We rarely ever saw that 50 years ago. Now, it seems like every summer we're seeing at least a couple of Cat 3s, maybe one or two Cat 4s, maybe even a Cat 5. It's become more commonplace.
right. Timothy Veltman makes the perfect point here. And he says the only reason hurricanes are so destructive is because we've become so careless in developing areas highly prone to them. And he's absolutely right. And politicians are loath to fool around with building codes because that costs money if you have to upgrade. A lot of these homes that were built many years ago just were not built to hold up against storms of any magnitude. I agree. You keep you develop your highly populated areas. Everybody wants beachfront property. Well, you're going to pay $50,000 a year in homeowners insurance if that's the case. So that is true. And also, I saw Jason Schaefer making a point earlier too. Is you're talking about quote unquote making hurricanes obsolete. Well, then what happens in those cases where hurricanes are drought breakers? There are you look back over history, and there's a number of hurricanes that have come inland that have broken serious droughts in parts of the Southeast, in parts of the Mid-Atlantic, in the Gulf states. So they also provide that function. Granted, they do it in a very extreme way, but that's just the way it is. And thank you, Fled Weather. You said it. You said what I wanted to say, but could not say to Mr. Reuben Fairchild. Oh, good God! Seriously, Reuben, if you want to get involved in the conversation, think like an adult and stop acting like a child. Frank Riccio, thank you so much for the super chat hit. Most appreciated. And again, I hope you're feeling better with in your on your recovery. And Bill Uber just says the same thing. You build a city that's below sea level. What do you expect that's going to happen? And it's true. And by the way, there was just to kind of touch on a pack about politicians loathing. I want to make this point with respect to what happened in Texas with the cold blast. I just want everybody to understand something. Having lived in both Texas and in Louisiana, okay? So the bottom line with what happened in Texas was that, in my never to be humble opinion, the wind energy that's produced there, and the natural gas and everything else, and in terms of the whole structure of the infrastructure of this, when all of that was being built, somewhere along the line, a decision was made not to winterize these things, okay? Because one of the big issues was through all of that, what happened in Texas was that the natural gas pipelines all froze, and it takes a long time when you shut those refineries down and when you shut down these nat gas systems. It takes a long time to bring them back up. But somewhere along the line, a decision was made not to winterize it. Now, here's the thing: when you do that, and then years go by, and then someone comes along and says, maybe we should spend the money to winterize the grid. Well, that's a very difficult thing to do after it's built, because no one wants to spend, it involves spending other people's money. It involves raising electric rates and electric bills and all the rest of it. So politicians are loath to do that. And then a catastrophe, and then you get a situation. I don't, what happened, and afterwards, oh, we did, we should have had this all winterized and all the rest of it. That's just kind of sadly how human nature works. If you look at the state of Louisiana, they've known the levee problem in Louisiana was there forever. After Hurricane Betsy in 1966, but what happens? The political will to spend the money disappears as time goes by, and then you're in a period where nothing happens, and someone comes along and says, this might be a good time to spend some money and upgrade the levees. No one's going to do it because they're not going to raise your tax. No one's going to accept a tax increase in order to pay for it. And then what happens? Katrina happens. And then everybody's like, well, we got to fix the levees. So that's just the way human beings aren't always proactive. A lot of times they're reactive. And in the case where money's involved, they're definitely reactive.
Agree 100%. Our worst enemy is time. The problem is that so many of these disasters take place over very long periods of time, that you have, let's say, one major hurricane, and then you may not be threatened again for 30, 40, 50 years. And again, as you just mentioned, Joe, during those quiet periods, it's very, very difficult to change the minds of a lot of people or the politicians to upgrade or to change things. And then what happens? Disaster happens again. It will always happen.
Right.
And it kind of reminds me of, yeah.
No, I was going to say in the 30, 40, I was just going to add to that, 30, 40, or 50 years, 2 generations go by. So suddenly you've got a whole population of people that have never experienced it before. So they're thinking, why are we doing this? This they don't have, they didn't live through it. The people that live through it leave this earth eventually. So as they do that, there's less and less will there's less and less will from the folks at home to do whatever it is they need to do. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Will you finish your thought?
No, I was just going to say, like, for example, what happened this past winter in Texas. And we talked about this. I went back over the archives of the New York Times, and I found that about every 15 to 20 years, you do indeed get a Texas norther, which is what they call this type of weather pattern, where it gets very, very cold very quickly after a spell of warm weather. This cold air plunges southward out of Canada, and you get the cold, and you get the snow, and you get the ice, and the situation of what they all experienced this past winter. Again, it doesn't happen every winter. It happens over long periods of time, 15, 20, sometimes 25 years. I saw a newspaper headline in 1985 from the New York Times, the exact same weather that we saw this past winter in Texas, storm of the century. Mm-hmm. People forget. You just mentioned it. People, they just, they either have not experienced it, or they simply don't remember, or they don't want to remember what happened. This is going to happen again. Let's see what happens when it does happen. Will there be any improvements? Will there be any changes in the infrastructure of those large Texas cities, or in the political structure of Texas? I sincerely doubt it. People are just going to keep putting up with this. And why don't we do something about it? And, every time they bring this up, nothing is ever done.
Correct.
And you have politicians, who are escaping it by going to Cancun.
Well, elections are won and lost on this sort of stuff. Local elections, anyway, are won and lost on this sort of stuff. Okay, enough of the serious talk. Let's, which we haven't done in a while. Let's move on to Brillo Jeopardy, as the chairman is out doing his COVID runs, and he left you a Brillo Jeopardy for me. So have at it.
Category: movies and geography. And he's left 5 questions. Question number 1 is, what state has more of the 100 largest lakes in the United States than any other?
What state has more than 100? Repeat the question, I'm sorry.
What state has more of the 100 largest lakes in the United States than any other?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, there's a ton of lakes in the People's Republic of the State of New York, but I'm thinking that's probably
But I guess he's talking. I guess he's talking about the hundred of the among the 100 largest lakes. Which state has most of the
Most of
lion's
the
share
top
of that?
100. Which state has most of the top 100 lakes? Is
Correct.
okay. Um, gee. Oh God, that's a tough question. I'll say I'll say California.
Well, I'll tell you what. If you know anything about basketball, the Los Angeles Lakers, at one time, the Lakers were not in Los Angeles. They actually moved to Los Angeles from this particular state, which is why it makes no sense to call them the Los Angeles Lakers, because there's not very many large lakes in Los Angeles or in California. But this state where this basketball team originated from did have the majority of those big lakes. That
Yeah.
was Minnesota.
Minnesota. Okay.
Minnesota.
Minnesota. Yeah, that makes
8.
sense. Okay. That makes
All right.
sense.
Now, question number 2 is, of the 10 tallest mountains in the United States, how many are in Alaska?
Of the 10 tallest mountain peaks in the United States, how many are in Alaska? I'll say 9.
Yes. Well, believe it or not, he says all 10,
All 10?
are in this state. All 10 are in this state, the 10 tallest mountains, and that's Alaska.
Okay. Well, I said 9, so
Mount Whitney in California is number 11
okay.
on that list. Okay, so here now we have an acting question. I don't know what acting has to do with geography or movies, but this is question 3. Who is the only person nominated for acting, writing, producing, and directing Oscars for the same film? He did it twice. In 1978 and in 1981.
Okay. I'm going to say
No.
Woody Allen.
Okay. Oh, here it is. I was saying. Well, let me help you out, because he did give two clues or 2 hints.
Okay.
He did it twice in 1978 and in 1981. In 78 for In Heaven Can Wait.
Oh, Warren Beatty.
And in 81.
Warren Beatty.
There you go. And Reds.
Right.
And Reds. You're right.
Right. So he got acting, producing, whatever it is, the whole list. Warren Beatty.
Acting, writing, producing, directing.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I don't. Yeah, I mean, Woody Allen. It was in his movies. I think maybe for Annie Hall, he might have gotten an acting nomination. I got to go back and look, but no, it's Warren Beatty.
And you are correct. Question 4 has nothing to do with acting or movies or geography. It's a presidential question. Who was the heaviest president, and how much did he weigh when he left office? And if you get within 30 pounds for credit.
You know what's a deadlier question than that? Who was the heaviest first lady? That would get you killed in any circle. The heaviest?
Yes.
Now I've got a visual of Ulysses S. Grant with kind of a big belly, okay, but
Right.
and a cigar, but I'm thinking that's not him. Gee, would have to. God, I don't know. I'll say Grover Cleveland.
It was William Howard Taft. Want to take a guess how much he weighed?
3 something.
Let's put it this way. If he were about 15 pounds heavier, he probably could have gone up against Gorilla Monsoon. 340 pounds.
Wow. That's a lot.
He was a biggie.
He was a big guy.
He was a biggie. And finally, question 5, back to geography. What northern state capital is on the Mississippi River?
What northern state capital is on the Mississippi River? Okay. I'm taking the track up the Mississippi. I'm visualizing this. So,
The Mississippi River runs from north to south, and when it gets to the end, it says, "Well, shut my mouth."
right. Well, it's not St. Paul, is it?
It
It's
is
St. Paul?
Saint Saint Paul.
Yeah.
There you go.
At that point, the Mississippi River is just kind of like a tiny little thing, I think.
I think they're like little streams and brooks that are in the vicinity of the Mississippi as it's just starting off. Itasca, I think, is one of the streams that runs into the Mississippi or whatever. But anyway, that's it. And Mr. Brillo wants me to remind everybody and remind my wife, Cooking Jeopardy with Renata will return not this Sunday, Easter, but the following Sunday, April 11th. And a very happy and safe Easter, says the chairman, to all of you, to Renata, to me, to you, Joe, our family, your family.
And a happy Easter to him and his mom. I'm
And
sorry, and happy Passover to him and his mom.
Yes.
Okay, so just a reminder to everybody, we're not going to do a show next Easter Sunday, okay? So we'll be on every day this week through Thursday, and then Joe and I will have a 3-day weekend. If there's some weather going on, I may sneak on in at some point over the weekend, but we're going to take Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off. But we will be back tomorrow night at the usual time, 7:30 Eastern. And the Joe and Joe Weather Show, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware, as your provider of mulch, as they're ready for spring. 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon. 631-756-1125 is the telephone number. The website, omnitruevalue.com, for the best prices in town for whatever you need with regards to your landscaping. And also brought to you by Wholesale Holiday Lighting by Giannini at 162 Ocean Avenue in Lindenhurst, 631-957-5106. Your complete holiday lighting specialist, meeting all your decorating needs. Or if you want to do this as a business, give them a call, 631-957-5106. liholidaylighting.com is the website. So everybody have a safe night and a beautiful Tuesday. Be sure you get out there and enjoy the weather. Mr. Rayo, you do the same. And we'll see.
I will.
Yes, please do. And we'll see you. We'll see you all tomorrow night. Good night, everybody.
Nighty night.